It's a death sentence.
Hi, I'm Carrie Smith.
And I'm Emma Skip, and welcome to It's a Death Sentence.
This is a podcast that takes a lighter look at the heavier things.
So, if you want some of this... So somebody could have been dead for a week and end up with you.
Or maybe longer, and somebody might have said, oh, there's a really bad smell. Or...
A little bit of this.
I haven't got a tissue. I'll get you one. You got one. And plenty of this.
So original. Fucking hell. Then this is the show for you. Because
Life,
it's a death sentence. Welcome to It's a Death Sentence.
Welcome back.
We haven't done an episode for a while, just us. We've done lots of interviews, which has been really good.
Lots of interviews.
Massive thank you to everybody that's been interviewed.
Yeah.
Today we have decided to have a discussion about assisted dying, about hospice care, and we're lumping anything else in there.
I think that's it for today. We have we've just interviewed the ladies from Primrose Hospice Care, which was awesome, and they're really, really nice and lovely, lovely ladies. Fantastic interview.
Yeah, and that interview is going out
Saturday,
which is the 17th of May. So in connection with that, we were going to just try and expand, because we know this assisted dying bill is going through the courts at the moment. And
it's very controversial, hot debate.
Yeah, and we are not, just for the record, professing to be experts in this. We're not by any stretch. This is a discussion. Carrie and I share some opinions and
we differ on some.
So this is what we're going to talk about today. So shall we get straight into it?
Yeah. So the assisted dying bill.
I've signed the petition.
Yes.
I've signed the petition? I've signed the petition. I would encourage you to do that. You actually end up sort of writing to your local MP to support it. Obviously only sign it if you are in agreement. But that's a question that we'll pose to you. Would you want to have the right to die if you were terminally ill? I personally would.
And that is what it's called. It's called the Terminally Ill Adults End of Life Bill.
Okay. But what we have just found out is, I think we all, when we think of assisted death, we think of Dignitas in Switzerland. And that's our go-to, isn't it? I just thought that was the only one.
Yeah, but actually it's not. There's loads.
But it's
loads
not
of countries where it is already legal.
We've made a little list, but what's interesting is they differ in what they
offer.
Yeah, I mean, it is an offer, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
But they differ in, your set of circumstances as well. So one of them, obviously, like ethical questions around this is, should somebody who suffers from very long-term and chronic mental health condition have the right to choose to die? And this is where it got interesting for us, because I am going to say yes, very controversially, but you're a no, aren't you?
I felt it was a no. I mean, I'm not saying that somebody with enduring mental health problems is not having a horrendous time, but I think the purpose of the bill is for people who are terminally ill and dying. And if you've ever cared for anyone who is terminally ill, or if you've ever seen a body that someone that's died after being terminally ill for a long time and maybe had a painful death, it's horrendous. And I don't think personally that terminal illness and mental health are on the same path.
Okay, I think let's put a pin in that for now, because I want to come back to it, because I think we could get stuck into that. But you have just mentioned something that I hadn't even thought of at all. So from your point of view, as your job as an anatomical pathology technician, I'm going to one day be able to that'll just roll off my tongue. But, there will be people picking up this podcast who maybe haven't listened to our others. And, this is Carrie's job. She does the autopsies of people who may well have come in, like you've just said, and I hadn't even considered that obviously most bodies that you're dealing with are in a state of disrepair because they're not coming back from that, But can you actually see when somebody's been
I mean,
very
you can-
unwell for a long time then?
You can tell if somebody's had cancer or they've been unwell, and you get obviously medical notes, so you can see the history. But to look at somebody who's had cancer for a long time and how unwell they look, and they almost look in pain.
That's so interesting. Like the expression.
And having, if you've, like yourself, seeing somebody dying of an illness that they've had for a long time is crucifying. I can only imagine what the families are going through. Never mind if they've had to come into us, which is another matter altogether.
Yeah.
But assisted dying, I think, gives people the opportunity to die with that dignity that they may not have.
Yeah, I think, let's just concentrate at the moment on people who are terminally ill. Let's just discuss that, because, yes,
that's what it's for.
Seen it with my own eyes, and if I could go back and, was given a choice with my family and with my mom, would we have collectively decided to end her life sooner rather than later? And there would have been a resounding yes. I don't really think I've got any issue in saying that, because, like you've just said, if anybody has watched somebody literally wither away, and that's what it does look like for a lot of people, people can become emaciated. They're so unwell they can't speak anymore. They're in so much pain they can't even describe it.
It's the quality of life.
And
the quality of life is not there.
And that can go on for months, years at times. And I know it comes with a lot of ethical questions, because the main one, I suppose, is what we briefly discussed earlier, which is if you have somebody who's in long-term care, for example, or an elderly person who is coming towards their end of their life, but they still have a quality of life, is there ever that kind of them feeling coerced or pushed
like
into it?
they're a burden. Yeah. So I'm a burden, so the best thing for me to do is to end it all.
Yeah.
You don't want to get into that realm.
And I think that's where there's a lot of problems around it, isn't it? Because it's not black and white, it's a very grey area.
Yeah, and each place where there is assisted dying or some form of assisted dying is different. But the bill that they're talking about for the UK is the same as Oregon, which came out in 1997.
Wow.
And that is for assisting people who are terminally ill. It's not for any other reason other than that. And there's been no reported cases of abuse of that system since it's been in place. And it's been in place a long time, so it's obviously successful for them. Did
you not find another place that prior to 97 that had been doing it?
No, I did. I was looking at the countries that do.
Well, run this list.
Yeah, so we've got some states in the United States. Some of the states it's legal there: Switzerland, Netherlands, Belgium, Canada, Colombia, Luxembourg, and Austria. They finally legalised it in 2022, and in Australia, all 6 states of Australia, it's legal. So, I feel like we're sort of behind the times slightly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even parts of Spain, I read that it's legal.
And again,
things.
For anybody listening or watching, if you know more on this subject, if you are any kind of expert or you're well read, will you contact us and can we interview you? Because it's such a vast subject. Our podcast is discussion based. This is Carrie and I discussing our own views, but we are so open to talking to everybody about what they think about it. But I think let's concentrate mostly on this terminal illness. And so, for example, some years ago, I had a little part-time job looking after a lady who had MS, and she was only in her 30s. And she went, in the time I worked with her, she went from being able to stand and speak to being completely bedridden, with a feeding tube, which we had to inject food straight into her stomach like a peg feed. And her quality of life literally disintegrated. And she had a young child. But when she became non-communicative, we couldn't understand. How could we possibly understand whether she had a quality of life? So when she saw her child every day, and she saw the dog every day, and she saw her husband every day, because she didn't lose all of her vision, and she would smile But a lot of the time she howled, and that's a fact. And it's not my job to sugarcoat it in any way at all. But that's what it looked like. And when she did finally die, she was like that for about 2 years. So 2 years being bedridden.
Do you think if she had been given the choice prior to getting to that stage, if she knew what was around the corner for her, do you think she would have decided to go with assisted dying?
It's really difficult because I didn't know her as a person, and because she lost her vocal ability, I could make her laugh. That was my skill set. I was really employed to do very basic things and care for her. Probably did about 7 hours a week, something like that. But in those 2 years, I got to know her husband really well, and he confided in me several times about how he wished he could do it for her.
Yeah.
And I think
that's the sticking point, isn't it? A lot of people who have to see their loved one go through it, often at the end of death, people are unable or maybe not lucid enough to make those decisions.
Yes, yeah.
So that's where the difficulty is, because if you're not lucid enough to make those decisions right at the end of your life, when you actually are probably in pain and you don't want to be here anymore, and it would be the kindest thing to do, that's where they say, well, you can't do that because, that's effectively you're taking someone's life without their consent.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're killing them.
Yeah. And so I suppose it begs the question about, as we all have a donor card, will we have something in place if this is ever passed?
Possibly.
That, we say, a bit like a do not resuscitate when you're in hospital, and
Yeah, I mean, they were massively controversial because they're open to interpretation.
Yes.
So,
and it can often kill somebody trying to resuscitate them, or at least really damage them, can't it?
And when they first came out, there was massive controversy about them. But I think what the main concern is, it's like the abortion bill.
So was the controversy around that, like, why should it even be a choice, you mean?
No, it was like, so I think some of the forms are like, do not resuscitate, and they are maybe specific to, say I had cancer, but if I went in a car accident, are you not going to resuscitate me when I could be saved? But I'm not dying of my cancer, I'm dying of being in a car accident. There's a grey area, isn't
really
there?
Grey. And also, let's say, for example, God forbid, you or I get a terminal illness of some sort. We have both said yes to an assisted dying if we're terminally ill. But during that terminal illness where we've said, we categorically, once I get to this point, I'm non-verbal, I can't do this, I can't do that. My quality of life is so poor. Do me the greatest favour. But actually, cognitively, inside, without being able to verbalise it, I don't want to now, and I can't tell you.
Well, yeah, because obviously consent can be removed at any time.
Yeah.
If you consent to something like that, you can remove your consent at any time.
But if you become non-verbal and you've consented to it, there's a massive ethical
sweetheart.
issue, isn't it? Like,
it's not like they're going to give you a diagnosis and then they say, right, so are you free next Thursday because we can book you in for
we've got a death appointment then.
Yeah, do you know what I mean? So I think this bill will be successful if it goes hand in hand with hospice care. And I think we need more funding for hospice care, more funding for options available to us that the hospice provide. They're a charity. They're not, they're not funded by anybody else. If they had more funding, people would know what was available to them. And
they'd also, I mean, let's reflect quickly on the Primrose ladies who joined us for their interview. They were like, hospice, the word hospice, people are very afraid of this word.
Yeah, because they think of death.
Yeah. But actually it is. You're going to be in a hospice at the end of your life. Well, you might not be, but you're not going there for any other reason. Generally, people don't often come out of these places alive. Yeah. But it's shrouded in taboo, isn't it? And like you say, if we get people talking about hospice care, what happens in hospice, and
anything also, palliative, any of those services.
Yeah. In fact, the ladies were saying, weren't they, about the word palliative? It doesn't really mean anything to anyone unless they're medical or they've had experience with it. But if, like you say, if it went hand in hand with assisted dying, it would be amazing. Which does lead us on to my mum did nurse training. Obviously, you're a trained nurse. And she used to talk to us about something called the Brompton or Brampton cocktail, which is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I understood this and the way I experienced it as well at the end of my mum's life was it is the only kind of legal way we have in the UK to help send somebody on their way. And I don't know, like, that's going to be controversial. There's going to be people who really hate me saying it, but it does happen.
I think the thing with end-of-life care and allowing somebody to have morphine or drugs that...
Yeah, we should clarify, the Brompton cocktail is just a massive dose of
it's
morphine.
not just morphine. That it used to be something else. It used to be a mixture of drugs.
Oh, really? So maybe that's what she was talking about then, because she said it was a cocktail, but I always thought it was just morphine.
It's a mixture of multiple drugs that gave the effect. But the main benefit of having something like that in end-of-life care now, if your loved one is in pain, and even if they're non-verbal, and you say to the staff they're in pain, they will treat the pain. Yeah. So if the pain is still there, they will increase the dose.
And that's exactly...
And the side effect of increasing doses of things like opioids or whatever could be respiratory depression. It will stop their breathing. Yeah. So death is a side effect of the cure. So the cure for the pain is the medication.
And I am right in that this happens a lot in end-of-life care.
It's done because at the end of your life, why would anybody want to be in pain? And if you tell them that your loved one's in pain, or you yourself say, I'm in pain, they believe you.
It's really interesting because I obviously remember my mum talking to me about this kind of thing. She didn't qualify as a nurse, as it happened. She was a German teacher. It wasn't for her.
She was given the Brompton
wasn't for her at all. She had some interesting stories about it, though. But when she was in hospice, she was only there a week. I remember her telling me this story about the Brompton cocktail, and realising as that week progressed, she went downhill very, very quickly. She was incredibly poorly and very, very weak. And they just had a drugs cabinet with a lock next to her in the bed. And I remember every time I knew she was in pain, I could tell from her face. I could tell from just little movements in her face, the odd little moan or something like that, because she spoke when she first went in. But I basically started to understand what was happening. So every time this happened, I went and asked them to give her some pain relief, and I realised that they never ever denied it.
Yeah, why would you?
And then, towards the end, I asked for it more regularly.
Yeah.
A lot more regularly. Because I had an understanding.
And it helped her on her way.
Yeah.
And that is a side effect of treating the pain.
Yeah.
And that is why it's not illegal.
Yeah. It's very...
It's
it's a very grey area again, but actually I think it's quite widely practised, isn't it?
Yeah. So this assisted dying, or whatever it's called, bill... the issue I have with it is, I'm all for it for terminally ill people. It is just a prescription, and you take it yourself. Okay. So you've got to think about the people who are prescribing it. How do they feel? How would you feel about prescribing it? Are you pro or are you anti? So not every doctor's going to be on board to prescribe it.
It's also, there's going to be a religious aspect.
Absolutely.
Massive,
lots of people who are religious.
Preservation of life is
life is precious.
It's central to a lot of religion, isn't it? And which, especially like when it can, like you briefly talked about abortion laws and rights earlier.
Well, this bill is causing the same stir that the abortion bill did in the 60s.
Yeah.
And their argument is, when the abortion bill was passed, that people could have abortions legally, the abortion rates went up. And what they're saying is, if the assisted dying bill is passed, assisted dying rates will go up.
Well, of course they will, because at the moment, if somebody wants to end their own life, if they're terminally ill, let's take that as an example.
And they can't at the minute.
And they're not allowed to, and it's actually illegal to commit suicide. I mean, what are they going to do, put you in prison? What a stupid law.
Yeah.
But you're talking about thousands of pounds to get you and possibly a member of your family, or possibly several members of your family, over to Switzerland or over to any of the other countries that are now, and you've got to fit the circumstances and fit the criteria, even if you're not paying for that, because a lot of them are not for profit, are they? That you've still got to be in the position that you can afford to travel.
And a lot of people at that stage of their life, they haven't got the money.
Here's a question. This has just come to me. I just need to word it right. So you've got a loved one. They're terminally ill. It is absolutely horrendous. And, I wonder how often it goes on that somebody does assist them to die in their own home in some way. And have you ever come across that's come into the mortuary?
Not that I could discuss. But
It must happen.
It must happen. It must happen. You know, people at home with their loved ones in pain. You know, if someone's dying, you're given a bag of drugs, basically. And I remember when Aaron's mum passed away, they were left a bag of drugs. She passed away. She was gone. She went to the funeral home. They'd never asked for the drugs back.
No.
And there were strong drugs in those bags.
No. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. I had another job, I'm going off on a tangent, but it's really relevant, working for a charity. And one of the people I looked after in this charity rang me one morning and said that she was going to take an overdose. And so I rang our HR department and they said, oh, it's up to you whether you go to her or not.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, that's why
that's
I did,
human kindness for you.
So I obviously drove to this woman's house because that role was in the community. And I rang my sister, who, as we know, is a counsellor and does a lot with grief. And I said, this has happened. She said, Emma, that is really, really heavy. It shouldn't really be on you. They should have said you're not going to go and sent an ambulance and blah and blah. So then I rang the police because they respond quicker than ambulance service, sadly. In that situation, I think maybe it's not the case everywhere. I know every county's different and everything. And they did send an ambulance and I got there, but she'd counted out all the pills. So this is the story. She counted, and this woman had been clinically depressed for years. So she had so much medication in her home, and she lived on her own. And because I'd had a relationship with her, like a professional, I was like a support worker helping her find employment and things like that. She'd called me, and so I went, and then I took her. The ambulance came, and I followed. Or I might have gone in the ambulance, can't remember, it's irrelevant. I then called her mental health team in the community because she'd been under them for many years, and all they do is sort of go, you know, here's something for you and then discharge you. Here's some more drugs, discharge you. Here's some more drugs, discharge. So this woman had been collecting drugs for years, heavy drugs as well. She had drugs for pain as well, you know. So then they gave her a mental health assessment and sent her home to the place where she had all the drugs lined up. And at that
is this
point,
woman still alive?
I don't know. I know that I worked with her for some time after, and she was very grateful to me, which was lovely. But it wasn't my role to do that for her. And they gave me a day's compassionate. They gave you like a day off, basically.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, and a thank you from the CEO.
Wow.
I wonder if they ever watch this.
I think, you know, it is a techie conversation to be thinking about all the things around this dying bill. People taking their own lives is a different matter, and we are going to discuss that on another episode.
But sorry, I think I went off on a tangent, but I think my point was that was mental health related, and we said we'd put a pin in that. So let's come back to it now if you're happy to.
So I think capacity is a big thing.
Yeah.
For this bill, making sure people have got the capacity
to choose
to consent.
Okay.
So capacity being the understanding of the gravity of the decision they're making. So
I said that I was pro-choice for ending your own life if you've got a mental health condition, and you were not. But
say you had something like bipolar disorder
or schizophrenia,
and you were having a manic episode.
Yes, yeah.
Or a depressive episode.
But surely there must be...
And you felt in that time, I want to kill myself.
There must be a framework. Well, there isn't. But let's say, with a mental health condition and the thing about the ability to end your own life legally, you know, could there be a time frame in which that they've got to see it out for a couple of years?
But then that's the same as...
Yeah, I know. So
that's the same as just living normally, isn't it?
What I'd ask you, what I'm saying is, within a 2 years period, if somebody suffers from bouts of real lows and real highs, and then is normalised or has it on, or maybe they have to take the drug therapy that the GP prescribes, see how they live
tick
like that.
All these boxes.
A bit like having a sex change. You have to live as a woman for a certain amount of time and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So, you know, if that were the case, I'd ask you now, so the lady I've just referred to, excuse me, my last job, don't drink Diet Coke while you're doing this. I would ask you the same question. So she was clinically depressed and was hospitalised more than once. throughout her life. So we're talking, she was in her 50s, and I think she'd been on meds for 20 years. So for 20 years, she'd lived as a very depressed person who was suicidal more than once. So to my mind, she hasn't improved, even with intervention from different forms. So mental health team have intervened, physical health team have intervened. She's got support from different funding pots. Like, that was part of my job. I was through a charity. So these things have been tested and tried with her, and it isn't working, and she still wants to end her own life because she just can't see a point in living.
I think that people do suffer from enduring mental health problems. Also, they do recover. And I think that emotions are transient. So how I feel when I'm in pain, or if I'm sad, or if I'm depressed, is different to how I feel in a year's time when that problem's gone away, and and your circumstances are different.
But how many years do you live like that before it becomes a chronic problem?
I also think that if somebody wants to take their own life, they will, and they're serious about it.
And
some people
often
attempt suicide with mental health problems, and it is often a cry for help, not a serious attempt on their life.
Am I right in thinking that we're going down the suicide route now? But you and I both know people who have taken their own lives, and I always thought it was the case that you generally don't know they're going to do it. They won't tell you if they're deadly serious and that's going to happen. But like you've just said, sometimes it's a cry for help. But when I think of the people I have known, I think it's 4 or 5, sadly. None of them were particularly surprising, other than one. But they didn't try it first, and they didn't tell people
that you know of.
No, but I mean, the people I knew quite well, so I would have thought they would have talked to family members. But yeah, how could I say? I couldn't say.
I think that's it's difficult. Suicide's a difficult one. I think we need to cover that more in depth.
But it does go hand in hand with assisted dying if we're looking at it from a cognitive capacity or a mental health capacity. I think this is it. I suppose when they pass any kind of new law that is going to be controversial, like you've just compared it to 2 or 3 others, which is absolutely bang on, it's accurate, shines a light on it. Everybody gets outraged by their various opinions, but ultimately it has to go that way, doesn't it? But this will.
We're behind the times.
It's so.
It's giving people the good death, isn't it? That's all people want. And when you see somebody die horribly or in horrible circumstances, surely it's the kindest thing to give them if they've got capacity to make that decision, if they've consented to it and they fully understand. Isn't that our right as humans to choose? We have the right to choose what we do.
Yeah.
So, in those circumstances around people who are very unwell, terminally ill, in massive amounts of pain, no quality of life, absolutely. I agree. I'm in agreement.
Do you know what the drug is?
I don't know what it is, no.
I feel like we should find out.
Yeah.
I'd be really interested. Is it the tablets? Is it liquid?
I know it's self-administered, but I don't know what it is.
I think, is it a liquid? I'd like to know.
I'm not sure.
Again, if anyone's listening and they could enlighten us, that would be very interesting.
We welcome any comments, and anyone who wants to get involved in this conversation, because it is a hot topic at the moment, then please get in touch.
To reiterate, this is a discussion. This is our opinion only.
Don't be offended.
Yeah, don't be offended. It's not for you.
Yeah.
If you're offended, don't bloody listen.
But thank you again for listening, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah, we're dying to talk to you. So thank you, dear listeners. If you've enjoyed our show, then please do all the stuff that will help promote us.
Like and share our podcast and follow us on socials, and please subscribe too. If you've got any feedback, it's most welcome, so please contact us.
Likewise, if there's a subject you'd like us to cover, please do get in touch, and thank you for your support.
We are dying to talk to you.
Santa.